STS bikes might be the best kept secret in terms of custom-made US bikes. These bikes are fabricated in Rushville, Indiana, and currently they only have a delivery time of 3 to 4 weeks, which is just amazing. While they do have 3 kind of preset models, in chatting with them, everything is negotiable. You can change things like chainstay length, boss placement, the length of the head tube, the length of the seat tube. It's essentially a custom bike. I know it's going to cost some money, but in terms of what custom bikes can go for these days, $3,100 for a complete rideable bike or $2,100 for a frame is a pretty good deal, but how does it ride? Like I mentioned, they offer 3 models with kind of broadly set geometries, but a lot of those features are negotiable. The one I tested is the Adventure model. Yes, I know, vowels are expensive. The Adventure model, like the name suggests, is meant for adventuring, i.e. bike packing, gravel rides, and touring. This particular build is rocking some 650B wheels. The tires are the Pirelli Cinturato Gravel H, which my first time trying a Pirelli gravel tire, pleasantly surprised. This one happens to be a little bit more faster rolling. The blocks are tightly spaced and aren't super deep. These have a measured width of about 45 millimeters. Looking at the fork, you'll notice that this one is quick release, but they now offer this frame in through axle as well. It's got a pretty basic and utilitarian uni-crown fork design, but does manage to have some 3-pack mounts to carry all your bike bags. Moving up, one kind of real subtle thing I like about this bike is it's got a pretty good head tube. And lots of production bikes have really short aspirational head tubes. This one, it knows its market. You're going to be a little bit more upright, and they make it possible to do that. Moving on to the controls, it's got some of my favorite shifters, drifters out there. These are the Gevinol ones. Cool about these is they can be both set up indexed as well as friction. If, let's say, you crash out and you bend your derailleur hanger but still want to shift, just throw it into friction and you'll never have to worry about cable tensioning the indexing. The brakes are by Origin 8. They're the Vice brakes, and they look pretty similar to the Win R1 brakes, which is to say that they are cable-actuated hydraulic brakes. So within the caliper, there is a reservoir of sorts, but all the braking comes from a cable. I really like brakes like these. I feel like they give you the best of both worlds. You get great modulation, awesome stopping power, but the convenience of setup and modification that only a cable brake can give you. One other nice detail is how the rear cable is routed. You'll notice that it comes down from the top as opposed from the bottom. A lot of people prefer this routing. The thinking is that since the entry hole for the cable is at the top, it's less likely to pick up a lot of road muck while you're riding. I think it also has the added benefit of making the brake easier to adjust and set up because you're not working within that tiny triangle. The cranks are Shimano GRX 2x 48, 31, and the rear cassette goes up to 32 tooth, I believe. Looking at the rear, this particular bike doesn't have any rack mounts, but since these are essentially custom bikes, you can have whatever, wherever bosses you would want. Lastly, the bike is finished off with a Brooks B17. Enough of the boring stuff. How does this bike actually ride? For this particular bike, when I measured it out, it has a rear chainstay of 430 and the trail is in the 70s. For me, this translates into a really good and solid all-rounder bike geometry. 430 isn't as responsive as a full-on race bike or crit bike, but it does have a lot more get up and go than a full-on touring bike, say something like the Long Haul Trucker. The trail being 70 is in the high range of mid-trail bikes, so it's pretty predictable, intuitive, no surprises, nice and stable. On flat terrain, the bike was basically drama-free. This is a bike, since it has a more relaxed fit geometry, is something that you could ride all day long. On the climbs, it wasn't anything noticeably jumpy, but it wasn't laggy either. Again, it was very middle of the road. The highish mid-trail on the front meant that when you were going on those slow speed climbs, the bike didn't do a lot of drunken goatee wandering all over the road. Going downhill, the bike felt composed and in control. Nothing squirrely about it. It didn't get slapped around or anything. It was just a predictable descender. In short, in terms of handling, it felt like it could handle most things reasonably well. Swap out the tires and you could treat it as a more relaxed endurance road bike, or you could ride gravel events, do some dirt road touring with the current tires. Or you could use it for the most important kind of cycling there is, bike commuting. I know what you're thinking, if the handling is sort of middle of the road, and I mean that in the best possible way, like it's just a good all-rounder, why would you get this bike over others? In a word, customization. While you could order one of their semi-production bikes, I think the real magic would take place when you tweak things. For example, let's say you like to get your bars level to the saddle like I do. You can have them build it with a longer head tube so you don't have like a gang of spacers. Or let's say you wanted more flex from your seat posts. You could request a shorter seat tube, maybe have a little bit more aggressive slope in the top tube just so there's more seat post showing and you can get more of that flex. Or let's say you like the chill front, but you want to dial up the jumpiness and spiciness in the rear. You can have them build it up with a shorter chainstay. Where this bike excels is that instead of working around or making do with the geometries that you get with a production bike, if you know what you want and you can communicate it, this might be one of the best affordable options for a custom US made frame on the market right now, at least that I know of. Welds are nice and clean. I know that they use double-butted tubing. They didn't really tell me which brand of tube or which tube set in particular, but if you get one built, I'm sure they'll answer that question. I think the best part of this whole bike is their current delivery time. Once you pay the deposit, have the geometry sorted out, you're gonna get the bike in about 4 weeks, which, if you know anything about the custom bike world, is pretty amazing. I think when Laura got her breadwinner, the whole process took about 6 months. So to have this in a month means that you could order a bike in the spring and be riding it in early summer. What are the things I like and dislike? Well, I like that you can get a truly custom bike without having to take out a loan or get a second mortgage on your house. That's really nice if you have a house, lucky you. I like that it's made in the US. You can support a domestic bike company, and also the wait time, or lack thereof. That's pretty dang good. In terms of the geometry and the handling, like I said, it's not anything special or anything on the weird extreme ends of bike handling. It's just a solid all-rounder, light touring bike-ish geometry. In terms of the dislikes, with this particular bike, I would have preferred rack mounts in the rear. But again, go custom, you can have whatever mounts you want. And probably the only significant downside for me is that they use pre-built forks. And I think this is entirely done to keep the cost down. Fabricating a fork in itself is pretty time consuming and definitely drives up the price of custom bikes. What that means is you have to work within the selection of their forks. So if you want a steel fork, it's going to be some iteration of the Surly long haul trucker fork. They do offer stock carbon forks as well. And honestly, it's only a downside if you want to specify like a very specific rake because you're going for like an ultra low trail bike or something. This then probably wouldn't be the brand for you. But if you're looking for a good all-rounder, or let's say there's a production bike which you really like but would want to tweak a few things, then working with STS might be an awesome option. If you guys enjoyed this video or learned something new, please consider supporting the channel by joining us on Patreon or buying some stickers. I'm literally a sticker salesman with a YouTube channel sometimes. It's what allows us to focus on these really small and niche brands which aren't going to do paid sponsorships, because we don't really do paid sponsorships. If you appreciate this kind of no strings attached editorial freedom I bring to YouTube, then consider supporting the channel. As always, keep the supple side down.